What's up? I'm Doug Kyed. Welcome to Pat's Chat. Here with Michael Hurley. Mike, so much news to get through today. Let's keep
Oh,
this intro as short as possible. How are you doing on this fine Sunday evening at 9:11 p.m.?
ooh, sensitive number there. I have a question for you.
Apologize.
This is a personal question, and it's sad, but like, do you get as depressed as I do when football winds down and ends from it's like a slow, they wean you off of it from the super wild card weekend of 6 games to the four games of divisional weekend to 2 games to 0 to 1, and then you're done for it genuinely affects my overall happiness, which is sad, but does it happen to you?
I'm going to say that I think that this plays into the area of the country of which we choose to live, and that is New England, because like finding something to do just on Saturday in New
Yeah.
England during the winter
When
is
it's zero out.
tough enough. When you throw Sunday into the mix as well, like we literally just sat in our house. Like we went to the gym, which we usually do on Sunday morning, no big deal. I
Brag.
exercised. But then for the rest of the day, it's like I'm like, all right, Jen, my wife, what do you want to do with these two children of ours for the rest of the day? And it's like, I don't know. And then I'm like, well, I don't know. So I went on like a 15-minute walk with them and otherwise just sat around the house. And I don't know if you have one of these children, but my 5-year-old,
I have two of them
Olivia,
actually. Yeah, they call them children.
she
Yeah,
she never stops talking. I love her to death.
yeah.
She's like the greatest person in the world. Literally from like the moment she wakes up until the time she goes to bed, she never stops talking. And that's great. It creates conversation, but at a certain point you're like, I'd like there to stop being talking. And that's
Yeah.
the problem with these Sundays is that I could go upstairs and watch football on Sundays and now I can't do that anymore.
Yeah. No, my daughters. I wouldn't say not stop, but they also sing freestyle, top of the head, not like songs from movies or anything, just constant singing at times. So
Yeah.
it's a beautiful sound. I'll miss it
Yes.
years
Yeah.
later when they're not
Yeah.
doing it. But there are times like an hour 9 of it, you're kind of like, I would not mind like some quiet, but it's part of the deal. But anyways, the point is, Doug, it's getting there and it sucks. And it's sad and I have no positive spin on it. And the saddest part is like, even when football sucks, it's still football. Even when
Right.
that Monday night Cowboys Bucks game and you know it's going to suck, you're locked in for 3 hours and you're entertained. It's something about, I remember like when my little brother was a baby, like a baby, he was born in October, he would watch football. And when it would go to commercials, he would, look around, but then the game would come on. He would watch football. It's like there's something about the colors and the movement and the
Yeah.
helmets that just is arresting and captivating. And we haven't had it. And today was tough, Doug. The Pro Bowl flag game did happen, but there was no helmets. Can we
Yeah.
do top of the podcast thoughts on the flag football game today, which I watched maybe 10 minutes of? My daughter was into it, surprisingly. There were at least 55,000 people in the stadium watching this. I feel as a nation we have failed that this attracted that many people in a city with plenty to do, plenty of
Lots to do.
entertainment options
Yeah.
in Las Vegas. It's not like living in Massachusetts in February. And at least 55,000, I don't know the capacity of that stadium, but it was almost filled. There were only empty seats up in the area where Patriots fans get verbally harassed by women and get free trips to Patriots games on Christmas Eve. And it was stupid. It was so useless that I guess it ties into the addiction thing. We are what we are.
Well, I mean, for me personally, because I'll watch college football games that matter, or I'll watch my Washington Huskies play college football. But otherwise, I'm not a big like sitting on the couch on a Saturday at noon to watch like two unranked teams play. And I
Right.
feel like I will watch every single NFL game that I possibly can, but I have a hard time. No offense to the people who run these games, I have a hard time watching the Shrine Bowl. I have a hard time watching the Senior Bowl, and I didn't even really necessarily try to watch a lot of the Pro Bowl stuff because it's just like some like I love football, and I'll even take my daughter to a high school football game because it's just like kind of something fun to do on a Friday night. I'll watch that because it feels like it matters. But like a football game that doesn't matter it's NFM. It's not for me. It's not appointment viewing for me.
Yeah. I will say Thursday night, whatever skills were on, I don't even remember. There was like
I
a
watched
bunch.
some of that. Yeah.
And my daughter, and it was good time. It was 6 to 8:30 or something. So my 8-year-old ended up watching a ton of it and loving it. So I got the perspective of why it might exist because my daughter doesn't really like football. She doesn't really watch football. I told her Tom Brady was retiring, and she said, "Yay!" And I said, "Why yay?" Now other people can win. So I
That's
have
fair.
taught them well, but
Yeah.
she was totally into whatever was going on, and I found it very boring. There was dodgeball. There was, I don't know, dodgeball was the worst of the bunch. But so the appeal to kids, like the Nickelodeon playoff game, my kids would always watch. I don't know why they didn't do
Yeah.
one this year.
Yeah, it was weird.
So I get why they do some of these things, but for me, like you said, not for me, not for me. I don't know who could have sat through the 10-minute, more than 10 minutes of the flag football game. And then my friend actually sent me a video. I don't remember who it was. A receiver. They were doing like fanciest catch, and the man jumped off a trampoline and did like a triple somersault spin thing trying to catch it. I'm like, if the point of this is so they don't get injured playing football, they
Yeah.
shouldn't be doing that. Like that. If that was my player, I'd be like, stop
Please
it.
stop.
Yes.
Yeah, when I was a kid, like I loved the Pro Bowl challenge things. Like,
Oh
like
yeah.
if you caught that on the Saturday before the Pro Bowl, like if you didn't have anything to do that day, your family wasn't dragging you out somewhere, like that was great. And that's kind of how I felt about the Thursday night stuff. But flag football with NFL players, it's just like I don't know. I'm sure it's for someone, and like you said, maybe kids will like it and stuff like that. But like, it doesn't fill the void personally.
No.
But for the next 30 minutes or so, I think we're going to have to talk about the Will Lawing hire for the Patriots,
Yeah.
why it matters, where we think he's going to fill in. In all seriousness, I don't have a lot of thoughts on Will Lawing,
No.
but it is. I will say that like the potential there would be that he would fill in for Nick Caley at tight ends coach, right? That maybe
Right.
not expecting Nick Caley back. Would that be the expectation maybe based on that? Or is he just like a body? Is he a guy that you add to your offensive staff who's got some experience?
Probably makes sense as a tight ends coach, given his history with Bill O'Brien
Right.
as a tight ends coach. My thoughts on Will Lawing, he was born November 27th, 1985. He is an American football coach who is an offensive assistant for the New England Patriots of the National Football League. He previously served as an assistant coach at Penn State University and Juniata College. Lawing has served with the Texans in various assistant coaching roles since 2014. That's the gist of my thoughts on Will Lawing. So
His
I think
intro
it's a
on
great hire.
Wikipedia doesn't even include his Alabama tenure. So that
Yeah.
needs to be updated. You know what my biggest thought on Will Lawing is? He also went to
Tough to
college
say.
from 2004 to 2008.
Ooh, he born in November '85. Look
Yeah.
at that. That's
Unless
amazing.
he was held back or something, which
Well, I
at
mean,
that point
yeah,
he would have been significantly
yeah, 'cause
older than the rest of his class.
he was a tight ends coach at Juniata College in '09. So,
exactly.
well, I
So
guess '08,
graduated
the
08.
fall of '08, he could have graduated in '09 technically, because the fall of '08,
Oh, that's
football's in the
fair.
fall, in my
That's
opinion.
fair. Maybe he redshirted. He played. He called. You missed this. Lyon played college football for the North Carolina Tar Heels, so it's certainly
Yeah.
possible that he could have redshirted 1 year at UNC, and he still would have been a. So at 2004 to 2009, maybe in college, got that extra
Yeah.
year.
I would hope. I would welcome another when he has a press conference at some point. I'll be like, "Hey, are you '04 to '08?" And he'll be like, "What?" And I'll be like, "College, '04 '08." He'd be like, "Yeah, man. Like, good question. Looking forward to it."
Yeah, no, that's the best thing I think to say about Will Lawing. Not a lot of thoughts there, but we'll see
Yeah.
if he can
But,
maybe if he is the
It's an
tight ends
offensive
coach. Yeah, could he get more production out of the tight ends on the New England Patriots? That'd be big for him.
It would. It's a good start, but not much there. I'm digging deep into the graduation rate because previous college, North Carolina, '08. Hell
Yeah, he joined UNC as a walk-on prior to the 2004 season. I'm now looking at his UNC bio. This is the kind of stuff
Ooh.
that you tune into Pat's chat for. He enjoys playing golf, playing pool, wakeboarding, and lifting weights. That's big for a football player. Very
Yeah.
important. His favorite NFL team is the Carolina Panthers, and would like to switch places for a day with Tom Cruise. He was an exercise and sports science major. So I think there's a
one
lot
thing-
to glean out of all of that.
Not sure how you feel about this. He was a December 2008 graduate, so it doesn't quite align with the '04 to '08. It was '08.
December 2008.
He was a winter graduate.
I was almost a December 2008. So
Yeah, he
Maybe
slacked off a little there.
maybe or it's either that he slacked off a little bit or that he had to continue to play football. So that's why he graduated at the time.
Fair
Personally, I
enough.
was almost in December '08. I think it was technically maybe like in August '08. I think I had to do
Oh
some
yeah,
summer classes, then I graduated.
mm.
But so we're basically the same,
Yeah.
It's
What's the
yeah.
difference? Good Will Lawing talk. I would say I'm going to end it. I'm going to say cease the Will Lawing talk. We did it. I think we nailed it.
I think we definitely nailed it as well. I was being facetious off the top. There's not a lot of Patriots news to get to on this show, so probably won't be like one of those hour, 12-minute shows. But there was, I feel like, some Jonathan Jones press over the last week or so. Some talk about whether or not he could fill in as kind of a team leader for Devin McCourty. And it's just going to be some big shoes to fill, filling in for Devin McCourty. And maybe Jonathan Jones, based on the players who are currently on the Patriots defense or in the secondary, would be the best choice since he's played a lot of positions. He's the oldest player of the bunch, but to my, he's never been a captain up to this point. Whereas I believe Devin McCourty was a captain in his second season in the NFL. Devin McCourty, a Pro Bowler, an All-Pro. Jonathan Jones, a very solid player, but not up to that caliber of player. And I would say that just based on talking to Jonathan Jones for stories in press conferences, all that kind of stuff, doesn't necessarily, at least with the media, have the same kind of verbal skills as a leader, as a vocal leader that Devin McCourty did. So, there's something there. I think that he's a good leader to have on the team, but leaders in the way of Devin McCourty, Gerard Mayo, Matthew Slater, they don't really grow on trees so much. So I kind of stop. It gives me pause to compare someone to Devin McCourty as a leader, personally.
Yeah, I will say it's clear. You mentioned talking to him and stuff. It's clear he's very well liked among the defensive backs.
And he's very smart.
Yeah, that row of the locker room seems to always be pretty tight and pretty connected. The defensive backs in the middle there. But yeah, I think it's a fair point if Devin McCourty retires, which I think we would probably lean toward that happening. Is there's plenty of guys that are high character, good performers, well liked, but like you said, they're a rare bunch when they have the quality of McCourty, and there are different types of it. I think back to the early Belichick days when you had your McGinnis, your Malloys, you had guys that were sort of intimidating almost. They were they would make sure the younger players did it because if Willie McGinnis is mad at you, as we unfortunately saw in some surveillance video recently, he's not messing around. Whatever happened to that? Kind of quietly.
I don't know.
But anyways,
yeah.
Anyways, that wasn't my point. But I think a guy like McCourty produces similar results from teammates, but it's more, all right, I've been doing this forever. This is how we do it. Listen to me. I'm the communicator. I won't mess up, so I won't steer you wrong. And it just sort of goes from there. Like you said, Mayo before that I think was probably similar. I don't think Mayo he was friendly and nice, but I'm sure there's the all business side that it's sort of the blend that I think guys like that have. And like you said, being a captain from the get-go is probably a factor there that I don't know. And it's not, I don't know. We singled it out with Jones, but maybe just roster wide. And we talked about it a few weeks ago, maybe, where if you do lose Slater and McCourty in the same offseason, it's just, I hate to use the term Patriot way because it's always been sort of meaningless, but it's more or less the championship culture really is eroded. Not eroded is the wrong word, but just naturally has dissipated.
Yeah, and even just to that point with guys like McCourty, Slater, Mayo, obviously Brady, who can be hard to find. Like Dante Hightower was a captain at times on defense, also a very high caliber player. But I wouldn't even necessarily say that he fits in that echelon of team leaders as those other guys do. And I think that that's maybe as strong of a point as you can make, that those other guys are hard to find because Dante Hightower was really good. He made really impactful plays. He was very smart. He was a strong leader, and he wasn't even necessarily a captain from essentially day two, the way some of those other guys were, and wasn't a captain year after year after year after year. So, yeah, it's going to be hard to find. And I think that also the the fact that the Patriots had so many players that you could like put in that bubble, and you could even say like Julian Edelman or James White or things like that. Like this Patriots roster needs a lot of work, because even looking past the leadership, there's not those guys on this roster who have made 4 or 5 Pro Bowls or have made like 4 or 5 All Pro teams. And I don't know. Obviously, the Patriots have good young players on their roster. I think that Kyle Duggar, Michael Onwenu, Marcus Jones, like there's a lot of potential on the Patriots roster, but to expect those guys to become those guys who make Pro Bowls or make All-Pro teams is still a lot to ask at this point.
Yeah, and I guess the other Pro Bowl point is the only person there from the Patriots is Matt Judon, who is clearly a Pro Bowler, but yeah, it certainly stands out, and it goes back to last summer. I know some fans took offense to those ESPN rankings based on executives, players, coaches, but you could quibble with some things, like Judon was left off that list. But the overarching point that they're not loaded with players that the league considers elite is somewhat telling. And so there's definitely work to be done. I don't know where they're going to do it, though. With the needs on the line, it's so difficult to, I don't know, spend at a luxury position like wide receiver or something like that. It feels like they have to. Are they still a build from the line out team? Are they different now? Are they going to have a quicker passing game? I don't know. But a big part of the leadership void, Doug, can be, I think they like Mac Jones. I think they like the way he handled last year. I think they like the way he handled the Zappy game against the Bears. Again, when the Patriots lost to the Bears, the last game the Bears won in the whole season, they won in Foxborough, if you forgot. But the way that he handled that, maybe at the end of the year when he was chirping a lot, I know like Julian Edelman has been critical of that. Maybe that sort of was stuff spilling over, but I don't know. Matthew Judon did talk about that and put his support behind Mac Jones at the. I don't know what else he's going to say. I don't think he's going to call him our idiot liquored up kicker, but you know, I think there's a chance there to build around if Bill O'Brien empowers him to do so. So I think that's a huge story given the significance of the position.
No, it definitely is. And that would obviously help. And, you know, as far as like early round picks in this year's draft, I will say that like, obviously the line is important. And like your biggest need would probably be at offensive tackle this year. It is a little tough to take an offensive lineman in the first round 2 years in a row. You know, like obviously it can be done. Off the top of my head, the Patriots haven't done that previously, correct? They haven't taken a first-round pick in consecutive years on offensive line. And just offensive linemen
like
gone the first round. Mankins, Solder, Wynn, and Strange. That's pretty much it, right? Off the top of my head.
I'm buzzing, but I think yes.
Matt Light was second round. Adrian Clem was second round. So it's not a position that, I mean, it's a position that they've used first round picks on fairly frequently over the 21 or 22 years that Bill Belichick has been with the team. But I don't know. It's kind of a tough pill to swallow, especially when I think Nicole Strange certainly could still be a very good offensive lineman in the NFL, but it's not as if he lit the world on fire last season as a rookie. Clearly he still needs some strength. There was times that he was like kind of borderline benched as a rookie, which isn't something that you love to see out of a rookie. So I don't know. I think that if you could potentially sign free agents or, you know, use maybe a second or third round pick on an offensive lineman, like it wouldn't be necessarily the worst thing in the world, I think, to use the first round pick on a cornerback or on a linebacker or someone who can be like that foundational piece on a team, or at least on defense, who can maybe take on some of that leadership aspects in the future. Because like, you know, to that point, I don't want to belabor it, but like Juwan Bentley, clearly a very good leader. He was a captain, I think, for 3 years at Purdue from the time that he was a sophomore, and he's been a captain here as well. He's just not as good as the other players. I think that like being incredibly good at your job carries more weight than just leadership skills.
So you're looking at the roster needs, but can leadership be filled in an offseason? I don't know that
No, I don't think it
that's
can,
possible.
but I think that it's kind of a future need as well. I don't know. Like I think that you
Yeah.
need to build the next foundation at this point, right?
Yeah. Yeah. No, it's part of moving on, I guess. It's hard because they have a good young core. So I guess maybe we don't know. Would we have talked about I guess we might have. Would we in year 2 would we have talked about Dante Hightower sort of as what he became? Because I remember in Super Bowl 49 going out to
Right.
Phoenix, I remember looking up at the big banners and it was like Russell Wilson, Marshawn Lynch, and like Richard Sherman, and then it was Tom Brady, uh, not sure who else would have been, maybe Edelman, and then it was Dante Hightower. I remember thinking like, "Oh, that's pretty big for him to
Right.
take that leap forward and appear in major banner promotions for the game." So maybe it is a little bit more gradual.
I do feel like I used like the first 2 or 3 years on the beat as being like a Dante Hightower defender because
Yeah,
there were Patriots fans in 2013, 2014, maybe 20, like whenever he was getting injured a decent amount, like there was a lot of criticism over Dante Hightower. I was like, guys, this guy's really good. Yeah, maybe he's
yeah.
not on the field for like every snap for 19 games or whatever it is, but like he was a fantastic player, and that's a player that the Patriots could certainly use at this point. And I don't know, like
There were times where like he'd get assigned to cover a running back on a wheel route,
right, it would be like, what are we
and he
doing
would
here?
get beaten. Event. It was like,
Yeah,
well, not the best setup for him. Not really
yeah,
his skill set.
yeah. The 6'2", 270-pound linebacker maybe shouldn't be covering 20 yards downfield,
Scat
but
back, yeah,
yeah,
more of a thumper than a cornerback, but
no,
good player.
it's very true. But I don't know. It's like we're probably going a little bit further down this line than we necessarily need to. But I do just think that when your captains are Dietrich Wise and they're Jawan Bentley, like I mentioned before, and the next year they might have to be someone like Jonathan Jones. But that's if he even comes back. And
Right?
like
Yeah.
I I think that he probably won't cost so much that it won't be prohibitive to bring him back just because he's now on his third NFL contract. He's 30 years old. I don't think he's going to get like top of market money at cornerback. If the Patriots do want to bring him back, it probably would make more sense to bring him back as a slot or maybe even as a safety than it would as an outside cornerback. I think ideally he'd like to fill those two outside roles with someone else. But then also moving him to safety, to free safety to fill in for Devin McCourty. I've always liked that idea because he did play that position a decent amount in Super Bowl 53. I personally like the idea of converting a cornerback to free safety because free
Yes.
safeties are hard to find in the NFL because you need to be fast and very smart. And Jonathan Jones is fast and very smart. I think that he could have like a second career as a free safety. And if you can find those two outside cornerbacks, and if you put Marcus Jones in the slot, then that's probably the best way to use him moving forward.
I want to reset. I want to rewind time. I want to start the Jonathan Jones segment of the podcast with that thought because I think that's the money thought. Because I think
Yeah.
that's if you do lose McCourty, a guy that knows your system, knows your coaching staff, knows what to do, when to do it, and he is sort of a right place, right time guy. I find when he
Yeah.
gets his picks, it's similar to McCourty, where you're like, how could the quarterback throw it to him? He's right there, but those
Right.
things don't happen by coincidence. So I like that idea. If you do lose McCourty, I like Jonathan Jones as a free safety more than I like him as an outside corner, I think.
Yeah, no, I definitely do. And I legitimately think that I've been writing in some form or another that Jonathan Jones should move to free safety when Devin McCourty retires for like 4 years now. Now, maybe it becomes a possibility because, yeah, I mean, Kyle Duggar, not the best fit for free safety. Adrian Phillips, not the best fit for free safety. Jabril Peppers, I'm like blanking on the other.
Joshua Bledsoe?
Joshua
Not,
Bledsoe, not the best fit
not
for free
sure.
safety. IMO, he's just a little bit on the slower side. So I do think that those guys could still play the safety positions, and then you move Jonathan Jones back there. Then you find two outside cornerbacks. But that's also easier said than done. We've got some late breaking news in here.
boy.
What are we, 24 minutes into the podcast?
Yeah.
This comes from Albert Breer. The Rams are hiring ex-Patriots tight ends coach Nick Caley as their, guess his job. Guess his job with the Rams.
Pass game coordinator.
Tight ends coach. So takes a lateral move with the Rams. I do think that, being on the Rams staff historically has meant good things for
Right.
offensive coaches' careers. So maybe that's the same thing for Nick Caley. I have some doubts personally about the Rams moving forward. And like this might be a conversation for another day, but like Sean McVay seemingly wanted to retire this offseason. Like that was just a very strange storyline of like, will he or won't he come back? He was allowing his staff to pursue other jobs. It was like very weird scenario. Matthew Stafford didn't play well last year, didn't play that much last year, had a contusion in his neck. He had arm issues coming into the season. I mean, there's a lot of questions on the Rams team as a whole right now. And like, I do still think that it probably makes more sense for him to move up through the ranks on the Rams staff rather than the Patriots staff. But also being a Rams offensive coach doesn't mean quite as much as it did maybe 2 to 3 years ago.
Yeah, eventually the well runs dry, but no, I think that's a good place to be. I wonder what their quarterback situation though is. I know Baker showed up there and wore what, number 17? Really looked off.
Yes.
But
Was
I
not
don't know.
great as a 5'11" quarterback.
no, it didn't really.
It's a tall
hated
man's
it, too.
number.
But I think it just tells you that obviously it was over here
Yeah.
but they did interview him, which I find interesting. The Patriots did, which was that
I just still feel like it was like maybe a solid. I don't know.
Yeah. I mean, the Jets interviewed him, and he had another interview.
Texans.
I guess that's surprising because the John Carroll connection with Caserio was supposed to deliver that one. So
Yeah.
I guess that wasn't happening. So
Well,
we kind of saw this coming. I think this was a last year. Maybe this is beyond getting over the fact that you were completely passed over for two guys that had no business running an offense. So
Right.
if that's the case, then it was done when it was done.
I would also say that I think the best way for him to kind of ease in as an offensive coordinator would have been under an offensive head coach and not necessarily like, under D'Amico Ryans, not under Robert Saleh, not under Bill Belichick, honestly, because like, I think that it's probably best to like kind of not run the show, not bring in your own system, to kind of work under someone else's system. Maybe still call plays because like Nick Sirianni doesn't call plays with the Eagles and they're just fine with Shane Steichen. And like, that's the best way for him to do it. But yeah, it's, I guess, a little bit surprising that everyone and their mother has reported how well respected he is around the league. And like, clearly he found another job, but not maybe as high caliber as a lot of people expected.
It's going to be a tough transition for him coming from a no days off, grinding, a staff that grinds at the Shrine Bowl to going to McVay, where he's probably like, hey, bro, it's 5:00. You got to get out of here, man. I might retire again this offseason. So it's going to be a culture shock for him. But no, I think you're right.
Could be the head coach there next year.
He might be. But it makes sense to be in a system where there's a lot of offensive minds and you can play a role and contribute to it, which he obviously didn't have here last year. At all, even though it was a collaborative effort. We were told it's a collaborative effort. Everyone's great. Everything's working great. Everyone's collaborating. Didn't quite work out that well, but there you go.
No, it's true. But yeah, they've got Mike LaFleur as their offensive coordinator now. Clearly, obviously, Sean McVay is head coach. And I don't think that Zach Robinson has found a new job yet. So he's still around as well as pass game coordinator and quarterbacks coach. Though I think that he was interviewing other places. I don't know.
I have a question for you. I'm going to put you on the spot.
Yes.
How many coaches have left the Patriots on a lateral move?
Ooh, God.
I remember they fired Dean Pease. That was like the lone firing, really.
Chad O'Shea left for an OC job?
Brendan Daly. Brendan Daly was lateral, defensive line coach.
Right, yeah.
Which, there was a lot that left that year. That was the Flores leaving year.
Right. And yeah, Brendan Daly, I think, just was going to like keep getting passed up as a defensive coordinator. So that's
Carmen
why he
Brasillo went O-line coach to O-line coach. So
did he leave voluntarily though? He went with come back?
No. That was Dave DeGuglielmo.
Oh, Brasil. Yeah.
Brasillo was last year.
Oh yeah.
Went O-line
no, like
O-line.
last year, but that was weird last year.
They needed an O-line coach and they let him leave for a lateral move and didn't seem to mind it. So they let him
out of his contract.
Yeah. So bad question by me, I guess, because we just named a few guys.
I think that Brendan Daly might have added run game coordinator to his role when he left for the Chiefs, which, I mean, honestly doesn't really mean a whole lot, I think, in the grand scheme of things, but like mostly lateral move, like a slightly elevated lateral move there for Brendan Daly. But Brendan Daly, he's coaching a lot of Super Bowls at this point in his life.
Is the run game coordinator often a defensive coach?
Well, on defense, because you can do a run game coordinator on defense.
Run game coordinator.
Yes. Yeah.
So that's not a real. That's just
right. That's a nice title.
But yeah, he joined
linebackers coach.
He joined the Patriots in 2014. He left the Patriots after 2018 and went right to the Chiefs. So he is like Mr. February. We needed 30 for 30 on this guy.
Yeah, it's unbelievable because like he left the Vikings and then the Rams as well. So like things were not going well for him team success wise. And then it was just like to the moon for Brendan Daly.
So
good guy, that Brendan Daly.
We got to ask the question. Yeah, I don't know him personally. He just looked like a psycho on the sideline, so I know he's a good football coach.
But he's a very, very nice and pleasant man off the field.
I'm sure.
Yeah.
So we have to ask the question, Doug. Was it Belichick or was it Daly?
I mean, I've been asking that for years. I mean, it's all gone downhill since Daly left. Clearly would have been the right choice to take over as head coach right there in 2019. Get Bill out, let him leave on top.
Tom Brady has only won. He's only won 4 Super Bowls without Brendan Daly.
That is true, and it's a fact.
It's just a fact.
Matthew Slater's never won a Super Bowl without Brendan Daly. Devin McCourty's never won a Super Bowl without Brendan Daly. Julian Edelman's never won a Super Bowl without Brendan Daly. The list goes on.
It's all true. Anyways, I guess he adds to that list of coaches that spend, but that does seem to be more of a common thing, I guess. If you go back to 2019 with Flores leaving, with O'Shea leaving, with the great Jerry Shaplinski, who we've mentioned before, leaving, and Brendan Daly leaving. There's been a lot of exodus, and it just added to the list. And now there's different caliber. There's your Skarneckias, there's your Fears, there's your Adams. But then I think all these other departures do add up. So it's another person you've got to replace. And even if they have it in Will Lawing, there's still other positions that are going to need some filling. So it doesn't help the Patriots.
You've got your Austin Forts. You've got your Pat Stewarts. You got your DeJuan Daniels. Honestly, though, credit to those guys. They knew when to get out. They predicted it, I'd say, better than a lot of the New England media did. I think that we all sort of thought this is never going to end. The Patriots are just going to keep winning Super Bowls. Tom Brady's going to stay as quarterback, and it's all going to be gravy for the next 10 years. And they got out when the getting was good, and credit to them for knowing when to leave.
I thought Brendan Daly was nuts. He was not. He's having a good time.
Was not. He's having a good time there in KC. We might do a show. We might do a show before the Super Bowl, but I think the Chiefs are going to win. That would be my initial thought. You don't? Interesting.
No. The Eagles.
So wait. Who do you think is going to win then?
The officials. Oh no. We'll save it for the next podcast. But the general feeling is that the Eagles have been such a just force, and they've lost really one game with Jalen Hurts at quarterback, and it was to the Washington Commanders in just a total no-show. Not like a overpowered outmatched type situation. So I've yet to see them overmatched this year, and I don't necessarily look at the roster and say this is unbeatable, but I just look at the results. They're a wagon, so I'm probably going to go Philly. I feel that in my bones.
We'll talk about it more on next show. I'm a little bit afraid that the path to the Super Bowl for them was beating the Giants, who are
bad.
Analytically, one of the weaker playoff teams of all time. And then they had to beat the 49ers, who had basically no quarterback for half of that game.
More than half.
It's a little scary, but we'll talk about it more on next show. I did want to talk since we're talking Super Bowls right now, and there's not a whole lot of other news, as we mentioned, related to the Patriots. What was your favorite Patriots Super Bowl? There's how many? We weren't alive for the 1985 Super Bowl.
Because we went to college 04 to 08. No, I was 86.
When were you born? May?
July 86.
July 86. So I'm a month older than you. June 86.
Nice. You old
So neither one of us were alive in January of '86, so we can nix that one from the group. But you got 2001, you got 2003, you got 2004.
Don't forget 97.
You got 97. I almost did
10.
forget about that. You've got
Nobody's
07,
favorite.
You've got 11. You've got 14, 16, 18. So that would be 9 Super Bowls that they have played in since we've been alive.
Yeah. Well, I mean, most important is obviously 36. And it's got to be a favorite just because I don't know of anyone that thought the Patriots had a chance in that game. And to see it play out, the Ty Law pick 6, you're kind of like, oh my God. And then the David Patton touchdown, you're just like, huh? Like that. Like, I don't think we can ever have that feeling replicated. That was a once in a lifetime thing. So that's sort of in a class by itself. There's been a hell of a lot of entertaining Super Bowls though. Like 38 was an incredible game. No score in the first half, 1,000,000 points in the first quarter, 1,000,000 points in the second quarter. Chaos, Brady throwing end zone picks. You might remember they basically got in field goal range to win the game, but they called a BS OPI on Troy Brown, and the Patriots were so good back then they just got it back on the next play. That was a great one. The Eagles one kind of sucked. 42 was great. 46, those were two really lousy teams. Really a down year. Fun game though.
Yep.
I guess the post ones, it's got to be Seattle. That's where I'm landing on, despite there being many other great ones and 28-3 being it. But I still look at the photograph of Malcolm Butler intercepting the ball, and I'm like, how did he? What the hell? How? I still can't believe it. I see the replay every time. I'm like, he's not going to pick that off. So to me, just that whole game, the comeback, the who had the catch on the ground? Why am I blanking?
Jermaine
Curse, which not just that, but getting up and getting shoved out of bounds by Butler. Butler?
It was because Duron Harmon leapt over him.
Yes, didn't touch him.
Which was like such a non-Duron Harmon play. But
yeah. So my answer is that one, which is crazy because 51 is obviously it's like there's a whole movie about it, 80 for Brady, starring Lily Tomlin, Rita Moreno, Jane Fonda, and Sally Field. They made there's a whole cinematic masterpiece out about it. But I'm going 49 for the significance, for reigniting the dynasty, and for how ridiculous the ending was.
I guess just to be different from you, I'll say 51, but I was thinking 49 as well. And like just personally too, that was the first Super Bowl that I covered. And it was between two teams that meant a lot to me. I grew up in Seattle, so I followed the Seahawks pretty closely when I lived out in Seattle, even though when they changed their uniforms while I was living in Massachusetts, they suddenly felt like a completely different team, which is something that was like a very of its time thing because like couldn't really watch the Seahawks that much when I moved out here. But beyond that's beside the point. Then I moved out to New England, so it was Patriots Seahawks. That was pretty cool. Being in Arizona that week was very cool. And yeah, it was just like, I mean, clearly in that moment there was no way that the Patriots were going to win that Super Bowl before that Malcolm Butler interception. But yeah, but I guess I would say like just to be different from you, I guess I'd say 51 just because of the comeback. That was another fun week in Houston. I would say that, like, personally, I knew what I was doing covering a Super Bowl much more by Super Bowl 51 than I did in Super Bowl 49. Like, I was by myself in Arizona for the week of Super Bowl 49. It was like me on the digital side of NESN and then like a photog and a host or a reporter or whatever on the TV side, but I got like no help from them. So I was writing like 11 stories a day, I think, that week in Arizona. I didn't really know what to do from a personal standpoint of like covering a Super Bowl or whatever it was. So like it was fun, but it was mostly a stressful experience. By Super Bowl 51, that was my third Super Bowl I covered. I knew what to do. I had Zach Cox out there helping me. We had help on the desk. It was a lot more of a peaceful experience. So, I think that Super Bowl 51 would be my answer. But the early ones were great, and Super Bowl 53 kind of a dud. But
No. I was going to defend the honor of Super Bowl 53 because
I mean, dud is strong, but
people hate on 53. I will say this. The Rams had the number 2 offense in the league, and they got smothered. And I think that is fun to watch. I will grant you the Patriots offense was sort of dysfunctional and led to some complaints. I get it. There was the pick on the tip pass on the opening drive. They kind of just kept throwing at Chris Hogan. despite him never being open. I think he had like 9 targets and
He's 7'11". He's always open.
He was not open. But I still think that game had a lot. I like seeing a defense smother a number 2 offense.
Yeah.
And that's after they beat the number 1 offense in the Chiefs the week before, if I'm not mistaken. Right. So I think that was a heck of a run. And then you still had 3-3, something like 7 minutes left. Tom Brady gets the ball and says, F this, we're going to win the game. Hits Gronkowski a couple times. No, it's not your fault. I'm reacting.
It is my fault.
Overall. Well, I appreciate it because it springboarded me. I almost said sprungboard.
Yeah.
It springboarded me because you still had, I argue, if any, name an NFL city, Miami, Jacksonville, Carolina, Houston, Dallas, Minnesota, whatever, if they had the drive that the Patriots had to win that game, there would be statues of Gronk making a diving catch. There would be a statue of Brady pumping his fist on the Sony Michel touchdown. But here it just sort of became, there's another one. It was an important one, and I think it was more entertaining than it gets credit for. That's my piece on that. But it certainly wasn't the best one.
Immediately, I regret what I said because immediately after the game, everyone on Twitter was like, that game sucked. And I was like looking at Twitter being like, did I just watch a different game? Like, what the hell is everyone talking about? Like, that was a very entertaining game. It was like exciting and it came down to the wire, but everyone on the internet hated the game. And I do remember being like, I disagree with this notion. So I said that out of, I think, public perception of that game.
Wow.
But at the time, that was not my idea. I was swayed.
Yeah. I will say the Goff factor, the pick was sort of just, it
wasn't anywhere near as exciting as 49, 51,
no,
36, 38.
A fun thing about that, and if we're doing Super Bowl memories, because it's Super Bowl week and the Patriots used to go a lot, the mic'd up, I don't know, there was a lot of mic'd up thing. I can't keep track of them anymore. But the play where Jason McCourty ran from a mile away and broke it up in the end zone, literally the Rams ran the same play earlier. And they said, who was the receiver? Was it?
It was Cooks.
It was Cooks, right? Running like a deep post. And he was like, I was wide open on the back end. And the Rams were like, if we run that again, he's going to be wide open on the back end. Then you go to the Patriots sideline. They go to the Patriots sideline, and the McCourties are talking. And he's like, Jason, you got to get over. Because he was basically deep third to the defensive left side. But with the way that play was designed, he would have to cover the deep middle on a deep post. And they knew it. And the Rams called timeout before that play. And at no point did boy genius Sean McVay tell Goff, look for Cooks. Because I believe there was a play action element. So he runs the play action and he looks upfield. Cooks was his third read.
Right.
And it took him that long, and there was a hitch, which allowed Jason McCourty. It's the fact that they weren't like, hey, just remember, Cooks is going to be open on this one. And it took him that long to find him. And that's why they lost the game. They could have won that Super Bowl if not for somebody reminding Jared Goff to find the wide open man when they knew he was going to spring wide open. That's crazy to me. I don't mean to dump on Sean McVay. He's obviously won since then, but that's maybe you've seen learning moments in the NFL in big stages, and those mic'd up moments sort of show you. And I think that was a huge one.
It definitely was. I've always had the opinion that people overrate the early dynasty teams and or like at least players on the early dynasty teams and underrate players on the later dynasty teams. I think because, I don't know, it's like a recency bias of maybe some of those players on later teams messing up more, like not being perfect, and you look back at like with more fondness to those early dynasty teams. And I think that, like I said, that's kind of dissipated in recent years as some of those players on the latter dynasty teams have retired. But it kind of brought back memories of that when I put out there the clip of us talking about the most important player of Tom Brady's career. And I got some responses that were like, clearly Kevin Falk, no question. Or like, clearly Troy Brown, no question. And like, no offense, guys, James White was better than Kevin Falk. I know that there are people who hold those early dynasty teams to the highest regard who think that I am an insane person for saying that. But James White, like, caught
Yeah.
so many more important. Like he was a better player than Kevin Falk. No offense.
I think it's
I would like and Julian Edelman was better than Troy Brown. No offense. Like it's
Yeah.
and Wes Welker was better than Troy Brown. Like I think that there were definitely players on those early dynasty teams who were better than the players on the latter ones, like Willie McGinnis, certainly, probably Rodney Harrison and
Tyler.
Mike Vrabel, Richard Seymour. But there was also a lot of really, really good players on the latter dynasty teams that I think are just now starting to get a little bit more of their due, I'd say.
I think what factors into that is what I mentioned earlier about the holy crap, the Patriots won factor. And there's no way, by the time all those guys in the second round came around, the Patriots were the bullies and they were the favorites and they were supposed to win. So I think the fact that, Troy Brown runs a punt back in Pittsburgh in the AFC Championship game, and then he did the lateral to, was it Gerard Cherry? He had the lateral, right? So, like, those plays where you're just like, oh my God, I can't believe they did that. There's no way that anyone else can get that sort of shine and respect and that I think the nostalgia plays in too, but I think that's a bigger thing where they were part of a dynasty that sort of surprised everyone.
Right. No, definitely. I think
did you have the lateral?
A strong part of it. I've been
yeah. Antoine Harris, not Gerard Cherry. Gerard Cherry blocked it, I think.
Okay.
It was very important we've solved that. That was a great game. I didn't think they'd win that one, but it wasn't as crazy as the Rams. That was just like, oh, cool, Super Bowl. Like,
right.
Yeehaw.
No, I don't know. Like I said, I think this was a bigger issue a few years ago when some other guys from the latter part of the dynasty were like fading off a little bit more. But now that a lot of them are retired, I think that they're held in a high standard. But I just want people to know that the latter dynasty teams were just as good as the early dynasty teams, and in some ways they were better.
Some people think the 03-04 teams could beat the 07 team, and I'm like, it depends when you caught them, I guess. Because in October of 07, that was the most dominating football team ever. I guess they ran out of speed and that steam that kind of took the wind out of their sails. But I have a question about a later dynasty player because I think I mentioned it before. Trey Flowers, thought he was going to be an all-pro. What happened to him?
I mean,
he made so much money.
What was his last year with the Patriots? Was it 2018?
Yeah,
like
he won the Super Bowl.
He was like I was putting him on all Patriots dynasty teams. Like he was so good. So good. He was drafted in 2015 in the 16 and 18.
Brendan Daly.
Yeah. Yep. You needed Brendan Daly. Absolutely.
It's crazy though. He was so good, and he went to Detroit, made $1 billion. Yeah. I thought he'd come back here last year on one of those.
I did too, but then he wasn't healthy in Miami, so that might have explained it.
Yeah, he played 4 games, but I don't know. He was a player I identified. I didn't think the Patriots would pay him, obviously, because he was going to make that elite free agent money. But I thought he was going to live up to some of that, and boy, he has not. Crazy.
He was a product of the Patriots, I think.
Yeah.
And to some degree, but I think health has been a major factor in the latter part of his career. But he was probably the best defensive player on at least one of those teams, right?
I think he was the
17 or 18?
I wrote, which I always point my nose. I wrote after Super Bowl 51 that he was the defensive MVP that game, and I had some evidence to say so.
Yeah.
Pretty significant. I know Hightower's sack was sort of the big highlight, but I had Flowers down. Now I don't have all the details for you, so I'm just going to have to rely on my own being. I am right occasionally, and that was a story I wanted to write after the game, but my car got towed, so I had to go to a scary tow yard in suburban Houston from a man with a shotgun and a dog, and get my rental car back, which got a flat tire, and I just gave it back to Avis.
How did you get your car towed at a Super Bowl?
All right, Doug, you remember where the Patriots hotel was in the middle of Houston somewhere, right?
Yes.
And there was a Walgreens across the street, and all week we used the Walgreens parking lot. We were told to use the Walgreens parking lot for the hotel, and that's where WBZ's base was. We had a little room there where all the editors and reporters and everyone was doing everything. So I worked there.
At the hotel, not the Walgreens, correct?
Not at the Walgreens, at the hotel.
Yeah.
So I parked where I parked all week. I walk across the street. I'm working. My flight was at like 6 a.m., so I was going to work until like 3 and then go right to the airport. And then Dan Roach goes out to get his bag out of the car and calls me. He's like, "Yeah, your car's not here." And I was just like,
Oh no.
so I couldn't write. We had to track the car down. Dan said he would help me out with the tow guy, try to, grease the skids a little, get some money off. It did not. No, we were lucky to get. He was leaving, but he stayed there. It was scary, not gonna lie. But we made it to the airport. One of those classic Super Bowl stories. It was a dorky Walgreens manager who was like mad at me, and I was like, "Why did you tow the car from the Walgreens lot? What was it doing to you at 2 a.m?"
Right. Yeah, seriously.
Brutal. When the Patriots hotel is across the street. I should have fought him, but I didn't. Anyways, that was
Houston. That. Houston, by the way,
big city.
Too big of a city. Big city. I think that at the time they would like overlay the city of Houston over Boston, and it would have been like from like Boston down to Braintree to Natick and like to Danvers or something like that. Like that entire area is Houston.
Yeah.
And like one hotel was downtown. I think that we were staying out kind of closer to where the Patriots were, which was pretty far from downtown. It was a fun week, but the travel aspect could have used some work.
I spent the whole week in the car because my hotel was like 20 miles east on the very edge, but still Houston somehow. Right. I don't know. It was crazy, but I should share that I've actually snuck into all the Super Bowls because my credential was to the auxiliary press room or whatever.
Right.
So in 2014, that was a room in the stadium, which wasn't great, but it was fine. But in 2016, it was a tent in the parking lot. I'm like, nah, that's not going to work for me.
Not going to happen.
So I went in with people that had the proper credentialing, followed them up. The thing is, with security at the Super Bowl is they're hired for the Super Bowl. They're not regular employees of the stadium. So I was a little nervous, but we're going up the escalator and there's guards there. And I'm like, oh, hope I don't get stopped. And the lady goes, "Welcome to the Super Bowl." Woo! Yeah, and I was like, all right, we're good. And then the aux press in the stadium.
Aux box.
Empty seats and all that. So that was 51 was the first time I did that. And I was thankful I did. And then I did the same for 52 and 53. Actually got stopped in 53 and rejected by a very vigilant worker. And I was like, oh, man. And so that was like, if there was 4 entrances, it was like the last one was the media one. So I went back to the auxiliary room, which was like a full city block away in Atlanta. It was far away. It was like a conference center. And I waited. It was probably like 1 o'clock and the game's at 6. I waited until like 5. And then I just walked in a regular entrance. And the same thing was like, "Welcome to the Super." And I'm like, "Thank you." But to avoid I didn't take an escalator. I just did the stairs or like the ramps all the way. And I was just pouring sweat. But I knew I had a seat there because my coworker had told me that we were good. He had confirmed with people that weren't in their like Telemundo seats.
Right.
So I'm thankful for that. Now I had credentials to the Super Bowl. I didn't sneak into the Super Bowl per se, but I had to wiggle my way in, and I'm glad I did because I don't know about you, Doug, growing up, never anticipated ever being at a Super Bowl, let alone 4 of them.
That's a funny thing is that, so this is the first Super Bowl since COVID that I will not be at. And previous to that, I had been at every Super Bowl up until 2014. So 2014, 2015, 16, 17, 18, 19, 21. And now not at this one. And I hope to be back there for 23, I guess, or whatever. But like I see people tweeting like, "Oh, like 10-year-old me wouldn't believe that I'm covering the Super Bowl." Like it literally wouldn't have crossed my mind as a kid to be at the Super Bowl. Like the Super Bowl was something that I watched at home. And it is pretty unbelievable that even if like I never cover another Super Bowl again, which I don't anticipate happening, like I had a really, really strong run there of covering a lot of Super Bowls and a lot of really good Super Bowls. So like I said, don't anticipate that ending, but I can't believe that, it happened.
We're doing the podcast Thursday with our Super Bowl hats on. And we're just going to be big Super Bowl guys. We're going to keep the Super Bowl content. Yeah.
I'll have all my programs on hand.
I love the Super Bowl, not going to lie. The whole day, the food, the drinks, I think I did a fire pit last year.
Wow.
Pre-game. Not during the game. I don't have one of those fancy outdoor setups.
I'm a big chips and dip guy. I will say that like when you're in the aux box, I've only I've been in the auxiliary press box for most of the Super Bowls that I've covered.
You get like
In
a
the press
Sammy.
box for like a couple. The food in the aux
Yeah.
box like could definitely use some work. So a few of the years that I was in the aux box, I was able to sneak into the press box to get like the
Oh.
good food.
Okay.
But if you're in the aux box, you get like a roast beef sandwich that's dry that like
Yeah.
comes with like the little packet of mayonnaise or the little packet of yellow mustard. And like me personally, I'm a man of distinct, like I'm not a big like yellow mustard or mayonnaise guy.
yeah.
Like I could use like like an aioli or something. I could use like a Dijon mustard or a honey
Yeah.
mustard. So that was a little difficult for me. I'm not gonna
Phoenix,
lie.
the Ox room there, I'm not even Ox, the like the room that I was
Right.
in, just
Yeah.
had like bare hot dogs. It was just like, here's a hot dog and a dry bun. And I was like, you know what? I'm going to eat this and enjoy it. But Atlanta, I was really thirsty and I bought a soda and it was like $2.50 and I got
Wow.
oh, it's on my desk at work. It's like a commemorative Super Bowl cup. Atlanta
Nice.
rocks. I loved Atlanta.
Yeah. Oh, Atlanta was like, I don't know how much people care about this. First of all, I'm going to say this
Aquarium.
earlier
Hell of
than
an aquarium.
an hour and 12 minutes in the podcast. Rate, review, do all that good stuff. Tell us what your favorite Super Bowl is. Atlanta was the best Super Bowl city that I've covered so far because everything was compacted into one area where you had the hotels and you had the stadium and you had the media workroom. It was all in the same
Chick-fil-A.
vicinity. And my hotel was within walking distance of everything, and it was great.
Your hotel is where they filmed Loki.
Oh,
The media hotel, Loki,
Yeah.
Disney Plus series, where they're like the Ministry of whatever
right.
media hotel. I saw it in the show. I'm like, I've been there. I rode
Last
a
year's
scooter.
hotel, actually, also the one in LA, was a big like filming location place
Oh
as
yeah,
well.
I remember that.
Yeah.
Well, I didn't go, but I remember seeing that.
Right.
I rode a scooter to that Super Bowl, so that is a life.
Yeah.
A state trooper wanted to shoot me dead because I was on the sidewalk and not the street. And I'm like, listen, man. He was like, you're supposed to be wearing a helmet. I'm like, yeah, I didn't pack one. And he was just like, he was
What
like
you
from
gonna
the, you could tell he was from the woods. He didn't belong in the city.
From the woods.
It's Georgia. The Georgia
from the
state trooper. He
woods
could have
of
been from
Georgia.
the woods. Anyways, we should probably, before I get in trouble with the law, we should probably put a bow on it.
You've admitted to breaking a lot of laws on tonight's podcast.
I didn't break a law. Oh, my microphone fell over. Yeah, it's falling apart here.
I just for anyone who's invested, some Harry Potter updates. I've watched Harry Potter
Yes.
4. I've watched
Good
Harry
one.
Potter 5, and I'm a bad parent. I probably like established that off the top by being like my daughter talks too much. But my daughter watched Harry Potter 4 with me, and she also watched Harry Potter 5. She was like, I want to watch Harry Potter 4. I was like, all right, we could try, and she liked it. And then a few nights later, she was like, I want to watch Harry Potter 5. I was like, all right, I've never seen it, but to my point earlier, watching a movie that she hasn't seen, that I haven't seen,
Yeah.
she just asks questions throughout the entire thing. And I say, a lot of these questions could be answered by watching the movie.
Yeah. It's
so
tough. It's a tough
she
concept to
learned
learn.
that.
It's
Yeah,
a
it
tough
is.
one.
It's a concept that she's picking up. But, there was a death in both of those. I cared about the death in Harry Potter 5 a little bit more. Spoiler alert. I'm talking about Sirius Black. That was a tough one. Didn't care quite as much about Robert Pattinson dying in
Cedric
Harry Potter 4.
Diggory.
Yeah.
Cedric Diggory. Yeah, no, that's a lot to deal with. I've learned. My oldest daughter's watching The Mandalorian with us, which is fun to rewatch with her. It's a fun show. I mean, it's kind of violent. but
Love a
it's
Mandalorian. Yeah.
kind of violent, but it's like space violence. But it started one of the episodes, and there was like the bad guys were raiding a village or whatever. And my youngest, who's 5, was in the room, and she just broke down crying because there was like little kids in danger.
Yeah.
So it's tough. You don't know what's going to catch the kid the wrong way. So be careful. Maybe we can do a little preview of 6. I feel like it gets pretty dark toward the end. It's pretty dark. Voldemort, bad guy.
I will say in 5, like Harry Potter is just always seems like very stressed out. Like there's not a lot of like happiness from Harry Potter in that movie.
Yeah.
Which
It
I think
turns
isn't
dark.
like the best thing for a kid. Olivia didn't realize that Sirius Black had died, and then like I referenced Sirius Black dying, and now she's asked me multiple times like, how did Sirius Black die? I'm like, well, the woman witch like blasted him, and she was like, oh yeah, he did go into that little area or whatever. I was like, yeah, I don't know, but
In Harry Potter, though, you get to be a ghost. Like, you never really go away.
right. I was like, I'm sure he'll be back, but to the Mandalorian point, I feel like Star Wars kind of messed things up from the beginning with the artist formerly known as Baby Yoda, now known as Grogu, where like when that show came out, they had no merchandising whatsoever for Baby Yoda. I don't know if you remember this, but like you could not find Baby Yoda anywhere because
It's like
apparently they
bootleg
either
stuff.
like didn't anticipate him being a gigantic sensation or didn't want to like spoil him appearing by having him out in this media or whatever. So that in itself, they messed up. Now you can't shake a stick without hitting some sort of Baby Yoda merch or Grogu merch or something. But my larger point here is that kids love Grogu. I have a 1.5-year-old. One of her first words, literally ever, was Grogu. And there's no programming for kids featuring Grogu. So it's either like, all right, you're going to watch a space western that stars Grogu. Or like, there's like something literally for preschoolers on Disney Plus that has like Grogu like floating in space or something. And like, yes, I understand that everything has to fit into the Star Wars canon. But my point here is that they could probably do some sort of cartoon with Grogu. Remember in The Mandalorian when he's on the planet with all the kids and they're all having fun together or something? Like, they could probably spin that off into some sort of like Muppet Babies type 10 episode series that still fits in the canon, right? Like you got to have some sort of programming for little kids featuring Grogu.
What if there was just a softened cartoon version of The Mandalorian that
yes,
obviously is not a supplement, but is obviously so kids who love wearing the shirts can watch something. That's a great idea. I say you get what's his face, Jon Favreau, on the phone. You can be a co-executive producer.
I'm gonna call him.
I'm a witness. I'm a witness, so I would like to be involved some way. I'll be the Brendan Daly of the operation, and we can make this happen. I think it's true. Like my nephew has like a Grogu shirt on one day, and I say to my brother, like, "Has he ever seen it?" He's like, "No, he's never seen it." It's like
no,
it's just natural. You're right.
My 1.5-year-old has a Grogu stuffed animal that she loves, and like that was like the number one thing that she needed for Christmas, and like she has no idea who this character is.
You're right.
And neither does my 5-year-old. And
it is funny though. They can't even make a shit like Boba Fett. What should we? We're like 5 episodes in. Oh, jeez, what should we do? Spoiler it. Oh, we'll bring Grogu back. We'll make it the Mandalorian. People love that.
Yes.
They do.
I don't know. I feel like Disney really needs to get its act together, clearly. But we said off the top here that this was going to be a shorter episode.
Half
it has
hour.
Not been. We're an hour and 2 minutes in at this point. We're talking about Grogu. We're talking about Harry Potter. We're talking about Super Bowl locations. So I think it's probably time to get out of here. Thank you for listening. As always, do you have anything else to add at this point?
It's almost the Super Bowl, which is great and depressing because after the Super Bowl, there's no more Super Bowl. But we're not there yet, and it'll never happen, and I'm never going to get old, and I'm never going to die.
After football in New England, it is a slow, gray death until right around like late April when the leaves start coming out again. And
Golf
you think
clubs
it's
come
never
out.
going to happen. And then it finally does. But I'll be heading out on vacation at some point next week. So there's going to be a pre-Super Bowl episode. There's probably going to be a post-Super Bowl episode, but then there might not be another episode until the following Sunday. So just want to get our ducks in a row here while we're talking about it. Follow Mike on Twitter at Michael F. Hurley. Follow me on Twitter at Doug Kyed. Subscribe, rate, review, do all that fun stuff. And we'll talk to you guys later.
Bye.
Bye.